August 17, 1944. Somewhere above the Pacific, the sun was bleeding into the horizon, turning the clouds orange and gold. 30-year-old Lieutenant Mark Hawk Ellery tightened his grip on the control stick of his F-6F Hellcat. His escort group had been airborne for nearly an hour, searching for a Japanese strike formation reported by a submarine earlier that morning. The skies looked quiet. Too quiet. Then, at 19,000 feet, Ellery saw them. 12 Japanese A-6M0 fighters, moving in a tight diamond formation, gliding silently through the dusk like sharks circling a kill zone. Their altitude gave them the advantage, their position gave them surprise, and their number gave them overwhelming power. Ellery was alone. He checked his guns, only to feel his stomach sink, jammed. All 6.50 caliber machine guns were frozen, a malfunction that had plagued his aircraft twice before. He slapped the side of the cockpit, cursing. There was no time to return to base, no time to try to fix anything. And the Zeros had already seen him. They broke formation instantly, fanning out like a pack of wolves circling their prey. In seconds, their noses dipped, the sun reflecting off their wings as they dived straight at him. Ellery swallowed hard. 12 enemy fighters, no guns, no support, no time, just a piece of rope. A rope he wasn't even supposed to have. Before we continue, where are you watching from? And had you ever heard of a pilot defeating enemy fighters without firing a single shot? Let me know. Stories like this take serious research, and seeing your comments makes every hour worth it. Ellery grabbed the rope now, 7 feet long, thick, coarse, tied with a heavy knot at one end. A rope that technically violated Navy air regulations. A rope he kept hidden behind his emergency pack. A rope he had once joked about during training. The idea wasn't his. It came from a veteran pilot in his unit, Commander Frank Lewis, a legend who had told stories about an old, forbidden aerial trick used during pre-war air shows, dropping weighted objects in front of pursuing aircraft to disrupt their propellers. It was outlawed because it was unpredictable, dangerous, and could just as easily kill the pilot using it. It was never meant for combat, never meant to be used at 300 miles per hour, never meant to save a life. But now, Ellery had no guns, no backup, only the rope. The first Zero came screaming in from the high right. Ellery rolled hard, the Hellcat groaning as G-forces slammed him sideways. Tracers sliced past his wing. He dove toward the ocean surface, altitude falling rapidly. The Zeros followed like a stream of white arrows. 2 seconds later, he leveled out barely 200 feet above the waves. The rope trick had one rule. You must make them chase you. And they were. Ellery took a deep breath, cracked the cockpit open by 2 inches, and wrapped the rope around his left wrist. His fingers trembled. The propeller wash was tearing at the cockpit, pulling the air violently out of the cabin. Then he did the unthinkable. He threw the rope. It tumbled behind him, whipping and twisting wildly, pulled by the Hellcat's slipstream. The knot at the end spun like a bullet, and the first Zero flew right into it. Not the propeller, its wingtip. At 280 miles per hour, the rope wrapped around the Zero's right wing, caught for half a second, just long enough to yank the fighter into an uncontrolled spin. The Japanese pilot never had a chance. His wing sheared off, spinning into the ocean as the aircraft cartwheeled into the waves. One down. Ellery didn't celebrate. He didn't breathe. He just retracted the cockpit again, pulled the rope back inside like a fisherman retrieving a line, then climbed hard. The remaining 11 Zeros were stunned. They had seen American pilots do impossible things, but never this. And now they were furious. The next 2 came at him from opposite angles. The Hellcat shook violently as rounds tore into the fuselage. A hole appeared near his left wing. Oil splattered across the canopy. 1-0 overshot. The other swung behind him, lining up for the kill. Ellery rolled left, kicked the rudder, and dropped the Hellcat into a sudden stall, something no Zero pilot expected. The Japanese fighter dove too deep, too fast, right under him. Ellery threw the rope again. This time, the rope tangled in the Zero's spinning propeller. The detonation was instant. The engine exploded, flames blasting out as the aircraft broke apart midair, 2 down. Ellery pulled up again, heart hammering. He looped the rope around his arm, his hand bleeding from friction burns, sweat soaking his flight suit. 3 more Zeros dived at him, tracers everywhere, filling the sky with fire. He dove into a cloud. Silence. Darkness. Only the sound of his engine. He tightened the rope again. The Hellcat burst out the other side of the cloud, straight into 2 Zeros head-on. He yanked left. They passed inches from his canopy. 1 Zero rolled behind him. Ellery threw the rope upward, out of the canopy gap. The rope struck its canopy, the knot smashing into the glass. It wasn't enough to destroy the plane, but enough to blind the pilot for 2 seconds. At 300 miles per hour, the Zero clipped Ellery's wing, spun violently, and plunged into the ocean. 3 down. Another Zero overshot again. Ellery pulled a brutal split S maneuver, diving toward the ocean surface. The fighter behind him followed perfectly. Too perfectly. Ellery yanked the rope upward again. This time the knot struck the Zero's air intake. The engine coughed, just once, before stalling completely. The fighter drifted helplessly, then slammed into the waves. 4 down. Now the remaining Zeros began to panic. About time. Ellery screamed upward again, pushing the Hellcat to its limits, his engine whining loudly from overheat warnings. He emerged at 8,000 feet, gasping for breath. The rope was frayed now, his arm was bleeding. But he wasn't done. 3 Zeros came at him in a line, their pilots desperate to end him. Ellery dove straight at them, head-on. They didn't expect the move. No one does a head-on attack without guns. At 400 yards, Ellery pulled up sharply and dropped the rope, not backward, but forward. The rope fell into their line of flight. The first Zero hit it. The rope slapped across its propeller arc, once, twice, before snapping. The first fighter's engine exploded instantly. The second swerved to avoid the debris, colliding with the third. 3 more down, 7 total. The last 5 Zeros regrouped, circling him. They finally realized he had no guns. They spread out, attacking from every direction. Ellery tightened his harness. "This is it," he whispered. He dove again, pulling every ounce of speed his damaged Hellcat could give. The Zeros funneled behind him in a perfect arrow formation. All 5 pilots lining up for the finishing shot. Exactly what he wanted. He opened the cockpit, took the rope in his hand, gritted his teeth, and threw it one final time. The rope whipped into the slipstream and struck the first Zero. The knot shattered its canopy. The pilot flinched, jerking the stick just 2 degrees. That was all it took. He clipped the second Zero. The second hit the third. The fourth tried to dodge and struck the fifth. All 5 went down in a chain of fire. 12 enemy fighters. 3 minutes of combat. Not a single bullet fired. Ellery climbed upward, alone again in the orange sky. The official report filed later described it as unprovable, extreme, and mechanically improbable, but the rescue aircraft found all 12 wrecks in a tight debris field. And Ellery? He survived. He was reprimanded for carrying unauthorized equipment. He was warned the rope trick was now permanently banned. But he also received a Navy Cross for the most impossible aerial victory of the Pacific War. Ellery never flew with a rope again, but the rope he used that day, it still exists, preserved at the Pensacola Naval Aviation Museum. Frayed, burned, torn, a reminder that sometimes the difference between life and death is just 7 feet of rope and the courage to use it. The carrier deck was silent when Lieutenant Mark Hawk Ellery landed. Not quiet, silent. Dozens of deck crew stared as his Hellcat rolled to a stop, riddled with holes, smoking from the engine cowling, a piece of Zero canopy still wedged into his tail section. His landing gear trembled under the weight of the damage. One mechanic whispered, "Dear God, what did he fly through?" Ellery climbed down, arm bandaged with torn cloth, blood soaked through his sleeve. He didn't even look at the crowd. He just stepped onto the deck, rope in hand, frayed, scorched, almost in pieces. The air group commander rushed forward. "What happened up there?" Ellery didn't answer. Not yet. Not until he gave his report. The debriefing that shocked the admirals. 2 hours later, he stood before a panel of 6 intelligence officers, 2 engineers, 1 flight surgeon, and a skeptical Admiral Turner, known on the carrier as Iron Eyes Turner, a man who never believed anything he didn't see. Ellery stood straight. 12 fighters engaged me. My guns jammed. I used a rope." Silence. One officer actually laughed. "A rope? Lieutenant, this is a combat report, not a campfire story." Another officer leaned forward. "Lieutenant, we are asking how the aircraft behind you were destroyed, not what you wished you had done." Ellery said nothing. He simply placed the rope on the table. The room fell silent again. It wasn't just any rope. It was nearly cut in half, shredded strands fused by friction burns, oil stains, metal dust, blood, even flecks of shattered paint that didn't match American aircraft. A Japanese engineer would later confirm the paint belonged to the Zero. Suddenly, no one was laughing. The Navy tests his maneuver. Admiral Turner looked at the shredded rope, then at Ellery. "Show me." Not with words, not on paper. In the air. They assembled 2 Hellcats and 3 worn-out captured Zero fuselages mounted on tow rigs. 6 pilots, 2 engineers, and the Admiral himself watched as Ellery climbed into a test aircraft. He took off, climbed to 5,000 feet, and threw the rope. It snapped backward, whipping through the air exactly as it had in combat. The knot slammed into the towed Zero's wing root. Just one hit, 1 second, sent the fuselage into a violent spin that ripped it from the tow cable. The engineers stood frozen. One muttered, "That should be impossible." The Admiral didn't blink. "Lieutenant, do it again." Ellery did. The second Zero's air intake exploded inward as the knot hit it at over 200 miles per hour. The third target shattered its canopy under the rope strike. 3 demonstrations, 3 successes. 30 minutes later, Admiral Turner signed a sealed report stamped, "Classified, Experimental Tactics. Do not discuss the rope trick was real, dangerous, unpredictable, but real." The truth. Was it legal? The Navy reviewed Ellery's actions under extraordinary improvisation during equipment failure. In short, if his guns had worked, he would have been court-martialed. Because they jammed? He was commended. One officer put it perfectly. Lieutenant Ellery survived because he broke every rule in the book, and we are alive because he did. The Japanese response. 3 weeks later, American intelligence intercepted a Japanese radio message. New American weapon, unknown, invisible, causes uncontrollable spin, several Zeros lost, must avoid close pursuit of Hellcats. They thought it was a new type of American device, a hidden explosive, a secret engine blast. they never once suspected: a rope. What happened to Ellery after the incident? Ellery was transferred to a stateside training unit, not as punishment, as protection. He was ordered never to repeat the rope maneuver, never to talk about it, never to teach it. But his students noticed something strange. He always kept a piece of rope tied to the base of his flight chair. One pilot asked him why. Ellery smiled. Because sometimes the rule book can't save you, but a rope might. The final mission, the one no one talks about. On March 2, 1945, during a training flight, Ellery's engine failed over the Santa Barbara Channel. Witnesses say his aircraft glided low, smoke trailing, his voice calm over the radio. "Tell the boys, I'm keeping the rope." His Hellcat struck the water. Rescue boats found only floating debris and a life vest. Ellery's body was never recovered. The rope was never found. But some pilots swear they saw him one last time, standing beside his Hellcat on the carrier deck, the sunset behind him. A shadow, a legend. A pilot who beat 12 fighters with nothing but instinct and courage. His legacy today: every Navy aviation class teaches a quiet lesson: improvise, adapt, survive. Most pilots don't know the story behind that phrase, but those who do, they whisper the name: